It's my pleasure to introduce Cheney and Rita, my code board members. I have gotten to know them very well, and I love having them on. This is usually how I see them, side by side on the screen too. So I'm glad they kept the tradition going for you guys for their presentation. Welcome to ensure you have a clear vision for your students' future utilizing transition assessments with Cheney and Rita. And for that, I'm going to let them take it away. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. It's great working with you on Florida DCDT, and all of you can also work with us on Florida DCDT. All you have to do is join us. We have a membership meeting tomorrow morning, so check your Event Mobi app and look for the membership meeting and join us. And with that, and with that, I'm going to share my screen. And there we go. All right. So let's get started.
So a little bit about us. We are from Kaiser University Multidisciplinary Center, which is part of the Fiddlers Network, which many of you have probably heard of. We are one of 6 multidisciplinary centers throughout the state. They're all at colleges, which you can see listed on the top there. And we are the newest of the group with Kaiser University. And we specifically work with transition-aged youth and teachers and staff and families. So that 14 to 22 is our primary area. You can check out our website at kumc.kaiseruniversity.edu. And this is our small but mighty team. We work in small and rural districts around Okeechobee, but we're also able to provide trainings like this one statewide. So our objectives, every good training has to have objectives. So we wanted to add these in here. We want you guys to be able to understand the importance of conducting transition assessments, specifically to guide transition planning for students with significant needs. We want you to know how to utilize the KUILSA, which is an assessment we'll speak about, to conduct a formative transition assessment and recognize the significance of transition assessments as a tool for students with disabilities. So, of course, when we were coming up with transition assessments and thinking about what we wanted to work with our transition age youth, we had to look at what IDEA says. And what they say is that the transition assessments, most of you probably know this, need to be age appropriate, need to identify student strengths and transition needs, present levels of performance in a variety of areas, and assist in writing measurable post-secondary goals. So all of the things we're talking about today, check all of those boxes.
And also, we wanted to give you some further information on selecting and conducting transition assessments. So please check out the Project 10 website at project10.info. They have a plethora of information on all kinds of resources for transition. And also another one is transitionista.org, and you can see that there. And also to let you know that this PowerPoint is available for download in the Event Mobi app. It should be at the on our session, but it's also in the documents and handouts section. And all of these links are available in there for you. All right, so the KUILSA we're going to talk about predominantly here. And this is, what is it? It is an assessment that we wanted to create to help assess students with little or no reading skills or limited verbal communication abilities. So it's those students that are primarily on access points curriculum. And we found that there were a lot of checklists out there, but none of them were student-centered or picture-based, which is what the supports that most of our students need. And most relied heavily on the opinions of others about what that student knew or didn't know. And so we predominantly give it to students in grades 6 through 12. And we did a lot of research on different assessments, checklists, things like that. And that in October of 2015, we came across this checklist. And yes, it's a checklist, but we adapted it, and it was a checklist that was from Washington State, and it's used by the Department of Social and Health Services for the Children's Administration for students or kiddos that are aging out of the foster system. And it was a checklist of skills that they felt were important for students to know, for kids to know that we're aging out in order to live a more independent life. So we took that checklist and we adapted it into a picture-based assessment. And in order to make it more accessible for our students, we wanted to have it in a format that they're familiar with. So we kind of modeled it after the unique learning system curriculum and also after the Florida State alternate assessment. So you're going to see as we talk about it further that it does model both of those. So it's a format that's very familiar to students already.
So some fast facts, and Rita already said a little bit about this, but this is our tagline for it, if you will. It's a picture-based assessment available at no cost. So actually everything we're going to talk about today is available at no cost. And we have some of the resources, but some of them are also available online. So if you have any questions or, you get home and you're like, oh no, where did they say to find it? You can email us. That's all in the PowerPoint as well. So it's available at no cost to schools and districts, and it's designed for students with complex cognitive and/or communication needs. And it supports those performance plan indicators 13 and 14 on post-secondary outcomes and transition IEP goals. And it's 3 key skill areas and broken down into 14 specific sections. And that picture is actually myself assessing a student virtually, which was pre-COVID, but I guess we were ahead of our time here, assessing it on the computer. So all of the things we're going to talk about are available virtually. So you could do the assessment virtually as well. So those 3 key skill areas, and again, this is going to support those transition IEPs, independent living skills, community skills, and post-secondary skills. And then we had it broken down into 14 sections. And this was, again, based off of that checklist. These were sections that they felt were important for students who were going to be aging out and were going to be living on their own. So we wanted to take those same skills and I believe it's 360, maybe 360 questions, right around 360. We've had some modifications to it over the years, but each section is, 20 to 40 questions, I would say. So the components of the assessment, the administration manual is the book that you would give to the student. So you could have this printed out. Oh no, I'm sorry. The assessment manual is the one you could have printed out. And that's going to actually have the questions on it. And we'll have a picture in a moment that shows that. The administration manual is going to give you any information that we talk about today. So if you have any questions about how to give the assessment, it would be in there as well. The student response workbook is Excel workbook. Rita's going to talk a little bit about that. And then also there are 2 required materials: Post-it notes or index cards or anything that you can use to scaffold like you would typically with students if you want to go down from 3 options to 2 options. So it could be a Post-it note, a spare sheet of paper, anything that you would typically use to scaffold, and then a child-proof prescription bottle. And you can use an old bottle washed out and cleaned up. You can go to Walgreens or CVS and ask them for some empty bottles. A lot of times if you tell them what you're using it for, they will gladly provide you with some new ones. So a little bit about the assessment. We wanted to have these things built into it. We wanted to make sure that it was accessible for all students and that there was no way that a student could not access the materials if presented in front of them. So we built in the presentation mode, the scheduling, the flexible setting, and the response mode to be in the whole assessment. It's all flexible, and we're going to talk a little bit about those things. So student responses, whatever your student is using typically to respond to answers in your class, we want them to use on this assessment. If that's verbalizing, great. If it's pointing and touching, sign language, use of a switch, or looking or eye gazing, or any combination of those is fine. Redirection, feel free to repeat directions, questions, and response items on this assessment and use nonverbal refocusing. So it's not like you have to say a question and then wait for their answer and then be done with it. If you say the question and you're not getting a response, you can refocus them and then say the question again. That's totally okay. Again, we really wanted this to be something that we could see what the students really knew on their best day, and give them, just like any other student is assessed and is prepared for the best assessment day. We want our students to be prepared for that as well. And then the reinforcement, you want to try not to indicate if our answers are correct, if their answers are correct or incorrect. However, I know that's really difficult. It's difficult for all of us, especially teachers. You know, we want to so badly say, yes, you're correct. But if you can be non-specific, that would be great. You can be specific on other behaviors other than their actual answers. Just because for purposes of validity and testing that we're doing, it is best if you don't give them the answer right after. So material placement, again, this can be flexible too. You can sit next to the student with the book like Rita's doing on the left side there in that picture. And on the right side, I was standing up with the book in front of the student. So really accessibility, that's our big main focus of this assessment. We want it to be best for your students and most accessible for them.
So basically there's no right or wrong.
There is no right or wrong. We've sat on the floor before with students and done it.
Absolutely. You can project it up onto a whiteboard if that's what they need to do. And we'll talk, I think Cheney talks a little bit more about that as well.
All right, so AAC, if your student typically uses an augmentative alternative communication device, you can feel free to use that. Each question has A, B, or C with each answer choice. So that would be the easiest way to have students answer the questions using AAC. If you were working on a lesson that was specific to some of these categories, it might be a good idea to populate some of those answers in. It would be, you know, time consuming, but if that was something you were doing, I definitely think that would be a good idea. So if your students use AAC typically, I would definitely say they could use it. And in that picture previously, and you'll see in a moment, a video of the same student, he didn't want to use his AAC device. He could use A, B, and C on it, but he was not feeling like it. He wanted to point. So, you know, whatever your student is wanting to do, I wouldn't force them into using that if they would prefer to point, because maybe that's easier for them at the time. And then all accommodations that you typically use in your classroom, you can use on this assessment. So instructional aids, one-sided booklets, flexible session time. You don't have to begin the assessment and then finish it before you stop. You can ask 2 questions and stop. You can ask 1 question and stop, or you can go through the entire thing, and that is okay. We've had students where we've done 1 question and we had to stop because it just wasn't the right day or time, and that was okay. So there's really no question to there. Like Rita said, there's no right or wrong to the accommodations. If it's things you're typically using, that is totally okay. Just, we don't want you, giving them the answer, but everything that you're typically using for accommodations is fine. And anything that you are already using for, I think this is kind of a similar, anything that you're using for students with hearing impairments, visual impairments, with limited physical ability or mobility, or English as a second language. So if you needed to have a translator there, either for students who are hearing impaired or who have English as a second language, then I would definitely do that if you think it would be helpful to the student. And here's just a picture of one of the questions. I know we've now been talking about how to use it, but this is just an example of what the assessment looks like. And this is from category B, which is food management. And our objective there, which you see on top, says wash his hands before eating and preparing food. And because this is all questions based on knowledge, it's not going to tell us necessarily if they wash their hands before eating and preparing food, but it will tell us if they know that that's what you're supposed to do. So it's all based on knowledge here. And hopefully eventually we'd love to do some testing on whether or not that does translate to actually doing these things. But this, for now, it is related to knowledge. So we would ask the students, which of these you need to do before preparing and eating food? And typically we would read the responses, point to them. Again, that's going to depend on your student. So if your student is able to read it, maybe they read it and point to the answer before you even get done. Or we've had all different students. Some of them like to point with you. Some of them like to read it to you. So
sometimes they use a pointer because they don't want to touch the page, and that's okay too.
And that can help too with keeping on task, maybe use that as a reinforcer.
Absolutely. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the scaffolding and the scoring, and also about the actual student response workbook. So with the scaffolding and scoring, it's very similar to what you've seen with the Florida State Alternate Assessment, some of the scoring that they use. So if you ask the question, give the prompts, The student answers correctly on the first attempt and there's no scaffolding needed, they get a 3. If they answer incorrectly on the first attempt, then you're going to cover that first incorrect choice, and that leaves them 2 remaining choices. You may need to ask the question and give the prompts again, and if you do, that's fine. But if they answer correctly, then it's a 2. If they still don't answer correctly, then you're going to cover up that second incorrect choice, and that leaves only the 1 correct choice, which is the errorless answering. And if they answer correctly, then you're going to give them a 1. If they push the book away or refuse to answer, you could legitimately, I suppose, give them a 0. But at that point, I think Cheney and I both agree that we would just stop the assessment and we would come back to that exact question at a later time when maybe they were more prepared and ready to answer. So that's basically the way the scoring system works. And then when you open the Excel student response workbook, this is the screen that you see basically. So the first area just gives you some quick instructions on how to use this student response workbook. Very simple instructions. Step 2, the demographics, you're going to click on that and we'll go into it. Each of these areas we're going to go into a little more. So I'm just going to go on with that. And when you click on demographics, this is what you're going to see. And the areas that are blocked with the red, those are the ones that are most important if you're going to share your data with us for research purposes. So county, age, or date of birth, grade, gender, primary exceptionality, race, response mode. Not only though is this good information for us to have when we're doing our research, but it also, a lot of these fields will pre-populate throughout the whole document, and we'll see that in a few minutes. So if you fill them in here, you don't have to fill them in again. All right, and this is what I was talking about. The fields that populate automatically are on the left-hand side. The fields that don't populate automatically are the date that you actually give the assessment, because that may vary. Maybe in section A, it's a little bit of a longer section, the money management. So maybe that's given in 2 parts. So maybe there's 2 dates. So you would go in and enter the first date, and then you would go back in and enter the second date. You have to be real careful in Excel though. If you're going to enter 2 data points into a field like that in Excel, you have to make sure that the first data point is not highlighted. You have to make sure and click your cursor over to the side and then add your second date in there. The individual student response score, so the 3, 2, 1, or 0, whatever it is that you're putting into those responses, those don't auto-populate, obviously. You have to enter those manually. All right, the second area, or the third area, I'm sorry, is step 3, the assessments. So you're going to click on one of these to go into an assessment area, and it's going to give you a score sheet that looks like this. Now, all the areas that are slightly grayer, so like the date and then the student responses, the scores, those are the areas that you have to actually enter by hand each time, you know, that you're giving this assessment. The rest of it is auto-populated back off of that demographics that you typed in. And also it auto-calculates, so like each subsection, it's going to auto-calculate their score in that subsection, and it's going to auto-calculate also the category for the whole section. So for category, for instance, in coins and currency, this student got a 21 out of 30, but for category A overall, they got a 64 out of 96. So it's going to do that automatically for you. You're not going to have to do that. So step 4, the final summary report. That's the meat and potatoes of it all. That's what we want to see, right? We want to see how well our students did, what areas they need to work on. So this is kind of what you would see. And we're going to go through each little section here. So I'm not going to make you squint and try to look at this little tiny print here. But again, on this student summary report, there are areas that also auto-populate. So everything on the left auto-populates. There is a section at the end of the report that you can type in your own notes, and that obviously does not auto-populate. You would have to actually click into that field and type those notes. So at the top of the student summary report, you get all of that demographic information that you first typed in when you started a student response workbook. Then you have just a little scoring guide that if you make a print of this and send it home to the parents, it'll help them understand what those scores mean for their student.
Staffing specialists and IP
Staffing
meetings.
specialists, yeah, anything like that. And we do have a lot of schools that use this and use this data in their IEP meetings, and they have really appreciated having this information available for the parents. The next thing you're going to see in the student summary report, the next field down, is a little graphic that just kind of lets you see overall how your student is doing in each section. So just looking at this at a glance, the first two sections I'm going to look at pretty closely are going to be the educational planning and the interpersonal skills, because those are the two lowest scores. And maybe I might even throw in job seeking skills in there to look at first. I mean, we obviously want to look at all of it, but we want to look at those areas that the student needs the most help with first. And then this is just going to give you a little outline of what date the assessments were given in each category. So next we move into each section has their indicators that the student can, for instance, identify penny, nickel, dime, quarter, etc. And in that section, the student got a 21 out of 30. So that's actually considered pretty good. They scored in the top 3% with that. So we're gonna color. You'll see that it's color coded throughout it. And the green means that they were in the top third. The yellow is the middle third, and if you see red, and I think we have some, yeah, right here, this one, it shows that they scored in the bottom 33%. So you're going to want to look at their report, and each area, each sub area, you're going to be able to see. So in this particular way, in this one, in money management, the student scored most poorly in identifying the necessary money needed to make simulated purchases, or identifying the correct amount of change, and the sale price based on price tags, and ways to save money. So those are the 4 areas in that particular section that I would look at first in helping the student to get those basic skills in that area. And then the notes section is at the bottom. There's an overall score also, but there's a notes section at the bottom that when we do a report for a teacher, this is how we would do it. We would give the present levels that we see for the student. And then we would also give some suggested goals, but those goals would not be specific to the student or measurable. So the teacher would have to go in and make them specific to the student and measurable.
But those
the indicators are
already there.
Yeah.
Those scores are going to pre-populate, so you
Right.
you don't even need the notes section. You could just take the indicators straight from that
Absolutely.
report and put it into your IEP.
Absolutely.
We know lots of teachers who've done that.
Absolutely. So if I'm a teacher and I'm giving this assessment in the classroom, I don't need to write up this whole area down here in the notes section. I would just take those indicators and make those into my specific and measurable goals, maybe. And then the last section that we have, with anything that you put out there, you want to know how it's received, right? So you want to know what was easy about it, things like that, what was difficult, whether it worked or not for people's students. So we ask that you do a teacher reflection form. And in that, there's only a few questions. There's 10 questions. And it's just basically an evaluation tool for us to know how the assessment went for you. And it gives us an opportunity to hear back from you. So in that, you're just going to click on that, type in the information up here. If you don't want to put in district school, you don't have to. Total number of students assessed. So we don't want you to do it after every assessment if you're going to help us out with returning your data. But after you've done several students maybe, and you've had a chance to work with it a little more, or when you're done assessing all of your students, then send it back to us with this area filled out in it. And there's drop downs for each one, and from 1 to 6, and you just answer the questions. It's real simple. And I believe there's a place that you can put comments, and it's fairly simple.
So here's a little example of the assessment being utilized with a young man in Highlands County.
One thing I do want to say real quick, back up about the assessment, is if you download these materials and you download the student response workbook, then make sure that you create a new Excel workbook for each student. And what we generally do is we have a template, and then we'll just make a copy of it. We'll name it that student's name, whatever it is, and then save it as that. And because you can't put more than one student into a workbook. Sorry about that. I forgot. All right.
So this is Danny, and it's just a quick video just to show you how the assessment is utilized and just notice some of the accommodations that were used. All right, let's take a look at this coin here. Do you think it's 25 cents, 10 cents, or 5 cents? You are correct. 5 cents. That's right. All right, ready for the next one? All right, this coin here, is it worth 5 cents, 10 cents, or 25 cents? It's not 5 cents. Do you think it's worth 10 or 25? Not 10.
You're having a tough time getting over to that side.
Is it that side?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it better if I stand?
No.
I mean. And so at this point, his caregiver was showing me that his left side is his better pointer, but it is hard for him to reach across his body to get to that answer that's all the way on the right side. However, he does not want me to stand on his left side because he tends to grab with it because it is his stronger hand. So we just had to make some, accommodations, modifications, the way I was standing, and you'll see in a second. That's his Kobe Dynavox he's got in front, but he did not want to use it. So we ended up taking that off.
$100.
What do you think? I like the way you're looking at all those. You were right, $1, right? That's a $1 bill. Small. And just like I said, not giving the corrective feedback is super hard. I try to do it, make a conscious effort of not doing it, but we all do it all the time. So
That's
it's
a
difficult
weird
not to.
way. Turn the volume up on this one a little bit, maybe. Hang on.
Kitchen shears or kitchen scissors. There you go. Kitchen scissors makes a little more sense to most people. All right, what about tongs? Which one of those is tongs? You got it. Awesome. All right. What about a measuring cup? We're looking for a measuring cup. Awesome. Which of these utensils is a spatula? Yep, you're right. Just want to make sure that was your choice. Good job. All right. Which of these utensils is a knife?
No.
The knife. For food.
It's not real. You can touch it.
Yeah, it's
just
just
a
for
picture.
food. Yeah. It's good. Awesome. Which of these utensils is used for opening cans? Awesome. And so, as Rita said, you can see there, I didn't have the Tobii Dynavox on his tray anymore, and that made it a little easier for him to access it as well. A little side note on the knife there, he's been told before not to touch knives, so that was why he said no to that. And his caregiver, of course, was able to chime in and say, it's okay, it's a picture, you can touch it, and told us the story later. So some other career assessments we want to touch on are additional things we found to be helpful with students. The first one we did actually modify a little bit ourselves. It's a picture-based pictorial career interest inventory, and it's 24 questions, and students are going to select between 2 job skills, which they would prefer to do. It was modified from one that had 3, but we wanted to have one that just had 2 for students that are still working on responding, giving, solid responses. A field of 2 is a little easier. Sometimes field of 1 can be even easier. So that's an option as well. The ONET interest profiler is something that is available online. I don't know how many of you are familiar with ONET, but they have a interest profiler that allows us to see what job clusters students would be best suited for based on their interests. And we did add some pictures to this one so that students could go through and actually see the job skills. Even for us, we felt like it was helpful. So if that's something you want access to. Is that also an event Moby, or they need to email us for that?
They would email us.
Okay, so for the remainder of these things, if you want access or can't find anything, feel free to email us. And then the other two on ONET, we also use, not as much with students on access points, but they can also be used if modified a little bit. The ability profiler, this is going to give you a good idea of students' ability and jobs that are based on their ability level. And it covers 9 skill areas: math, reading, spatial ability. There's a variety there. And then the last one is the ONET work importance locator. And this one, students are going to rank 20 work values. So do they like to work alone? Do they like to work outside? Do they like to work, I'm sorry, not outside, that would be interest. Do they like to work with a boss who's on them all the time, or somebody who leaves them alone? So it's all about those values that we sometimes don't think about, but things that we prefer. You know, some of us like to work alone, some of us like to work with others. And that's going to, again, align to 6 work value areas. And if you use the work importance, ability, and interest all together, you can really narrow down some jobs that the students might be best suited for based on all 3 of those things. And here's just a picture of the pictorial career interest. This is the one that has the 2 job skills that they can select from. This one's great for
4 different pages
for middle school students. That's right. Yeah, this is 4 different pages, 4 little snapshots. Great for younger students, just to give them a little idea of what they might be interested in. And again, this is where we might talk about, well, do you like to work outside, or would you rather work inside? You know, do you like to work with your hands? A lot of these jobs do have students working with their hands, but do you like working with people or alone? So some of those things you can talk about in this one as well. And this is just our scoring sheet for that one. You can go ahead on.
All right, and this is the adapted ONET career interest that we took the jobs from the ONET and wanted to give students a picture so that they had a visual. And these are 4 different pages. And we went with the 3-point ONET. There's a 3-point and a 5-point. And I think if you're online doing it on My Next Move, it's 5 points. But if you look at the research from ONET itself, there was no visible difference between the 3-point and 5-point assessments. People still scored the same no matter which one they took. So we went with the 3 because students can tell us they like it, maybe, or they dislike it. And that's a little easier than trying to rank it on a 5-point scale. And as you can see, the pictures correspond to the actual jobs themselves so that students have a visual of what the jobs look like. And then these are just some of the score sheets that we do for teachers, giving them the reports.
And then this is just a good resource out of all the assessments that we've talked about today. If you were looking for any of these things, present levels, career interests, values, suggested goals, or suggested careers, you can see at a glance which assessment would be most appropriate. And you can email us about that. And so we are at the end. We hope you are able to understand the importance of conducting transition assessments to guide transition planning for students with significant needs, know a little bit more about how to utilize the KUILSA, and recognize the significance of transition assessments.
And if you have any questions, we would be happy to take them at this time.
Stop share.
And we also want to remind you to do the evaluation for our session. It's available in Event Moby. And I'm going to leave this up there for just a minute, but if you download our presentation, which is available in Event Moby as well, this is in there. And you can email either one of us or visit our website and connect with us. So now I'm going to stop share.
Well, thank you, Shani and Rita, for that great presentation. At this point, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone and camera if you'd like to ask those questions.
Oh, thank you, Nick, for putting our emails in there. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I figured I'd cut the corners there for you.
There you go. That's
Appreciate
perfect.
it.
While people are deciding if they're going to turn on their camera or turn on their microphone, I'm looking for those.
Everybody's been shy today. All the sessions I've been in, nobody's turned on their cameras.
Right.
That's kind of the nice thing about being at home, though. You don't have to be.
Debo.
Hey, Deb. That's a familiar face. And I know too, we have offered a training to different counties throughout the state for their teachers if they need it. Hillsborough, Lee, I don't know, Collier, several different counties throughout the state. And even if we can't come and do it in person, we can do it virtually. So, and as you can see, the assessment itself is very simple to use. Please feel free to email us if you would like to have access to it. When we're face to face, Michelle asked a question, do you provide the workbook for the assessment or do we have to print it out? When we're face to face, we have given out printed copies of it that are bound. Not being face to face, we don't have that opportunity this year, but we would be more than happy to provide it to you digitally. And it's just in PDF form, and you could do the individual sections because it's a monster of a thing when you put it all together. So you could like download each different section and put it either on the computer or on like an iPad. If you have access to put your PDFs on there, you could do it on there and then have the student look and select on there. So you don't have to print it because it is a lot to print it.
Some transition departments in our counties have printed it out for them.
Yes.
So I would definitely talk to your
Yes.
people. Those of you who aren't at the county office, talk with your county office transition people,
Absolutely.
because a lot of counties have printed them out for their teachers, at least one,
Yes.
for the county. So
I'm gonna take a minute real quick to remind everybody, because I know we're getting down to the end. Don't forget to take the evaluation. You can access that through the EventMobi site where you got the Zoom link at. Right below that, at the very bottom, you can make that do that evaluation for us. We very much appreciate your feedback. Debo, did you have a question for Cheney and Rita, or were you just jumping on to say hey? I want to make sure everyone gets their questions in as well. Okay, maybe not. We had someone else, Parent Education Network, I believe, was waiting to ask a question.
Was that you, Allie?
I was just saying hi because I haven't seen you ladies in forever.
hi,
There
Allie.
you
No,
go.
we miss you. We can't wait to see each other face to face again.
Right? I'm really enjoying Damien and I forgot her name.
Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Yeah.
They're a hoot though, but we miss you guys terribly.
Yes, we miss you guys too.
Yes, don't forget the
Yep.
membership meeting
Membership
tomorrow.
meeting at
Absolutely. Debo,
9:30.
good
Sorry.
reminder. Yeah, 9:30.
We won't be there. We'll be monitoring other
Yeah,
sessions.
we can't go because we have to monitor other sessions.
I
I
know.
know.
I was like sad when I realized
We're doing really good to make sure you guys, get involved with the evaluation for the membership meeting. This membership meeting is how I got involved. I showed up
Yep.
and listened,
Us too.
Us too.
Yep.
and that's the next thing you know, I was in.
Yep.
Liz reeled us in.
Well, last chance. Any questions? Any comments? Any
Thank you
feedback?
guys. See you
Again-
tomorrow
Feel
morning.
free to reach out and email us if you come up with questions or if you want access to the materials. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you,
Nick,
Jenny and Rita,
thank you.
thank you for the presentation. Very, very well done.